Hi, welcome back to Woollen Hearted. It's been quite a while, hasn't it? I think I last recorded in the last few days of Vlogmas, just before the official end, but I never quite got to the end. I sort of gave up the ghost just before. Nothing serious, just I was just tired after the month of filming probably. There was the craft fair. Children started their holidays and life just took over. So apologies for the abrupt ending. It wasn't my intention, but I don't think it's too much of a problem really. But now it's April. It's the first week of April. Today's the 6th, Sunday the 6th, and it's obviously spring now. The sun is shining. I've sadly had to just put a towel up on the French window just to keep the light to not be too bright on me. And everything's going green and springy, and there's flowers in the garden and there's flowers in the fields around the village. There's green shoots coming on the trees. The mountains are still very much in the murky, muddy brown colour, but little by little the green will start going higher and higher up the mountain, which I just love. And just before summer, we'll still find spring flowers in bloom higher up, which I just love. I think that's just so lovely. It's like you can keep having spring if you want, the higher up you go. So and with spring comes a little bit more energy, a little bit more creativity, and a little bit more focus. And sort of wanting to do things. The winter's not been a great time, nothing serious, but just a bit up and down, I'll put it like that. And I've managed to stay out of hospital, which feels like a real achievement because I've been in hospital at this period for the last 2 years. So I've done really well, and that feels like progress. I have to remember to pat myself on the back because it's a lot of work to every day is a lot of work with bipolar disorder, as I'm starting to understand finally. There's medication, but there's also my lifestyle, my rhythms, my routines. And I'm just really trying to take that on in a positive way in my life, the best I can. So that's me. That's where I'm at the moment. And today I wanted to come back with sharing with you some of the things that have been keeping my fingers busy for the last 6 or so weeks. I didn't do at all much crafting following Vlogmas and the craft market. I've not done anything for Woollen Hearted. I've not made bears or dolls or anything, and I wasn't even crafting at all from the end of December until sort of mid-February. So the new year is here. We're already 3 months into it, and I'm just slowly now taking back, picking up my needles again, picking up my crochet hook, and I've been mainly working with scraps and oddments and leftovers from my stash, and I have been finding it really fun, really fulfilling, and just a great thing to do. And I wanted to talk about that with you today. I began my blanket projects, so this one with the granny squares. I don't know if you can see because of the light. So the granny square one I began 2 years ago, and I finished it in December, as in I finished all the squares, just got the weaving in to do, which I'll talk about in a minute. The granny stripe blanket that came about after that was inspired by a couple of years ago I started making these granny stripe squares So these are the two that I've got left. And it was a project for me to just go into my stash, pull out some yarns that I felt went together, and crochet these squares. They'd sort of take me an hour or a couple of hours at a time. Like, these are sort of beachy colours. Love this one. And then this one reminds me of blueberries in the mountains in the summer with the lovely greens. And the idea was that I was going to crochet them all together and make a really big blanket for our bed, for our parental bed. But when I finished making them, I had enough, but I just didn't really like the colour combinations. Some of them were very red and some were very blue, but not completely. I just felt like there wasn't like a harmony with them. So what I did was I undid all of the squares. I started unravelling them. I think half of them I hadn't woven in the ends yet, so that was really easy. And I unravelled them and they turned up in little balls like this, because obviously they were on a limited width. And then I started making the granny squares, but I had to use other yarns from my stash to make the outer one, because I think I could get first and second, possibly the third round in with one of these little balls, but I could never get the last end in, and so then I'd have all these little leftovers. And that's where the granny stripe blanket came in that I showed you. I talked about in Vlogmas. So this is my son's blanket. He adopted it from, he decided it was going to be for him. So I started one for my daughter, which is the striped, and that's really made up of oddments. And yeah, I worked on them both. They both are finished apart from the weaving in the ends. And what I'm now doing with the ends is I've been watching a lot of the podcast It's a Sarah, from the Netherlands, which I really enjoy. I love the mix of sewing and knitting and crochet and just a general sort of crafty life. I love the fact that Sarah's got a very clear palette and style to her clothes. The way she sort of integrates her crafts into her home, I just love. And she had this thing that she hated weaving in her ends, and then she decided that she was only going to be allowed to weave in her ends at the weekend, I think on a Sunday. And I've recently taken that on and it's doing wonders. I love the fact that it's all I'm allowed to do on a Sunday when I'm crafting in the day, and it's proving to be quite efficient. I'm really getting through those ends now, which is wonderful. So yes, I have gone through those blankets, and then this February I hadn't done any craft at all since December. I'd not done anything for Woollen Hearted. I've not made any bears or done dolls or anything. I just didn't really have the inclination and the energy. But as February was arriving, we approached the winter holidays here in France, and we had glorious weather for 2 weeks. It was warm and it was sunny, and we had picnics outside in the garden nearly every day. The children had activities in the morning or the afternoon down in the town, so doing art or ceramics, a little bit of sport. And so we had this lovely balance of them going off and doing fun things, and then we had a little bit of time to ourselves, or we went for a coffee, and then in the afternoon we'd all be together again. And I really benefited from taking my aunt, kind of got a fold-up camping chair out into the garden so I could be in the fresh air and be with the children. And I started a new blanket. So I started a granny striped blanket for our bedroom. I wanted to have one for our bed, and I cast it on and I started working on it. Oh, let's do it the other way. So this is it. I started working on it and just really got into it. It's very long. This is the problem with it. And I was just spending hours. It really seemed to fly by because it's just really satisfying. And as you'll see, I'm going to try and insert just a little bit of film that I took a couple of weeks ago about it before I started unravelling it. I realised that it was just going to be too wide and that I wasn't going to have enough yarn to complete it. And yeah, so I decided to unravel it, but we'll just look at that now. So that footage unfortunately got deleted by accident, but here you can see the blanket after I'd first started unravelling it. It's folded up, and that basket full of little balls is the all that I had unravelled on that day. So that was the first load of unravelled blanket coming off. Just in case that didn't work, I was just saying that I'd got quite far on it. I think it was about this deep before I realised, I tried it on the bed again and I realised that it was just too wide. We have our bed is a king size bed, but it's against a wall, so I sleep against the wall, and therefore where I'd anticipated for it to drop down the sides, it was not going to do that. It was starting to get very heavy, which was really satisfying. Like, I love having a heavy blanket on me. That's why I particularly think I like using DK weight yarns for blanket making. I have shown you this blanket before. This is my Cozy Memory square blanket, which now looks like this. If you go back into my earlier podcasts, I'm talking about this blanket quite a lot, but this blanket has never been used because it's just too thin. It's ever so pretty. I love the harmony of the colours and everything, but it's just too thin. So what I've been doing, don't tell me off, but as I didn't weave in the ends, I was waiting to sort of have it finished before I wove in the ends. I've just been unravelling it and doubling up the yarn and then using it as well in this blanket. But yes, I just realised that it was going to be too heavy. All that would happen would be it'd be pretty in the day. I would enjoy lying under it at rest time, but then in the night it would just be kicked off because we'd be too hot. So I decided to unravel it and start again. So that's Mark 1 and this is Mark 2, and I've only just started it. I started it a couple of weeks ago, but haven't done much on it because I've been waiting to film. And yeah, this is the new version, and it's still quite wide, but it's only just a little bit wider than the one I made for my daughter. And once again, originally I was thinking that it was going to be for on our bed, but we're now wondering whether to put it on our sofa, because our sofa is sort of brown fake leather. It's a bit rough because whoever had it before had a cat, and the cat has scratched its claws on it. It's a bit worse for wear. It looks a little bit sad, but we love it, and it's very comfortable to sit on and to lie on. And the only problem is in the winter it can be a bit cold under the bottom when you first get on it. So we thought, oh, maybe we could have a blanket to sit on, and also I'd like just a lap blanket for in the evenings or the days when we're tired and we want to lie down on it a little bit. So yes, I have started a new blanket, and it's just using all my ends, and it took me a good week to unravel all the blanket that I'd already done into tiny little balls. Thankfully I hadn't sewn them in. And I ended up with an enormous pile of little ends, little balls. So this is just an example of what I've got left to work with. And they're sort of like this size. Some of them are very short. I can just get one little stitch out of, for example, that will make one stitch worth. but it's just lovely to have it in. And these are all yarns from my stash. Many of them are naturally dyed by me when I've been doing my natural dye experiments. Some of them like that have been naturally dyed by me and spun, so that's some hand spun. There's some leftovers and oddments of very sort of special yarns, like that's some blacker yarns, West Country tweed. That's, for example, some yarn that I have dyed with logwood. And there's a few sort of random things, like this one, I bought a big stash of embroidery wool, like for embroidery, wool embroidery, from a thrift store like a couple of years ago. And again, I sort of was inspired to do like a little blanket with it. And then there's just things I've been given, or like I participated in Stash Vent a couple of years ago, and that was one from Stash Vent that I haven't decided if I'm going to put it in or not. I might save it for doll clothes. So yeah, I've got an enormous tub of tiny little balls. Sorry, that's the timer. I've got some wool on the stove, modern thing. And this is just, these little balls have been part of my making life for the last couple of years, and I just wanted to show you some of the things I've been doing with them, including the blankets, but it's a good opportunity to just catch up on a couple of projects. Last year my daughter turned 5, and her request for a present from me was a woolly snake, a knitted snake. So I knew that I had a pattern in this book called Knitted Toys by Zoe Meller, and I've had this book since it came out, which I think it was published in 2006. So I would have been 18, 19, not quite sure. And I've made quite a lot of things from this one. I love knitting and knitting toys. I've made this cowl for a friend, although she had to just remind me about it the other day because I wasn't sure if I actually had made it. I was concerned that I was just dreaming that I had made it, but I was confirmed that I had. I've always loved this little piggy with his little stripy shorts on, and it was a time when I was a young auntie to 2 girls and a little boy. I never got around to making it, but I really wanted to make the shiny robot for one of my nieces or nephews, but I found it difficult to find the lurex thread, so I never made it. As I said, I've made a few things in here, and in the middle there is a snake. So I duly cast on using the scraps from my oddments box and made a snake. And I actually made it a little bit longer than it said in the pattern. And here he is. This is Percy. So this is made from nearly almost all naturally dyed yarn that I've dyed myself. I think that one's commercial. I think that one's Ramachinul, and that's Abinaya yarns, but all the rest I dyed myself. And yeah, so he's filled with wool. I bought like some, it's much more inexpensive to buy, they call it flocon. Wool that's been scoured but not carded. So it's much cheaper to buy the wool like that than carded bat, because I don't need carded bat to go in this one. And I made him last May. My daughter's birthday's in June, and when he was finished, we wrapped him up like this. We rolled him up like this and then wrapped him up in a naturally dyed play silk. I made some play silks over the last few years, and we used them as wrapping for presents. And she thought it was going to be a pillow when she felt it. She thought it was going to be a round pillow, but in the end it was a snake. So that was mid-June, and then my little boy, who's not so little now, he was coming up for 9, he asked for a snake for himself. And so I have knitted it, but his snake has never been stuffed and put together, purely because I need to buy some more stuffing. And we were about to go away for a month on our summer holiday, and I didn't want that at home just because of moths. Although I have, you know, I tidy everything away very carefully, but I didn't know what it was I didn't have a bag big enough for what it would be, because the bag I had for the last lot had got a bit damaged. So anyway, here's Mr. Snake. Is also made with nearly all naturally dyed, but that one is some finoule that I had bought just to add a bit of colour into my crochet blankets. So I just sort of, I'm not like against buying yarn for these scrappy projects, but where I can use what I've got already, that's sort of the ideal. So this one has got more green in it, which he requested, and yes, he's just waiting now to be finished off, and I'm going to try in the next month to get him finished off so he'll be ready for his birthday, although there's more birthday requests that have been made. So yeah, I've just been enjoying sitting quietly with my oddments, with my scraps, and just engaging in some scrappy projects. The other way I've been using it is knitting socks. So once again, all lovely bright colours. I started making pairs of socks for the children only like a fortnight ago, and because they're DK weight, they knit up ever so quickly. So these have not been washed and blocked yet. My little girl loves doing it with me, so I was just waiting for her to have some time to do it with me. These are, so they're odd socks, and the way I just make sure we know they're a pair is I just do the heel, toes and cuffs in one colour, and then I use kind of the same, I grab the same colours all together to keep sort of some harmony. So these are DK weight knitted on 4mm needles, and they are the children's Sunday sock, I think, by Petite Knit. I've had the pattern for a long time, and I finally got around to using it, and I have to say it's probably not the easiest if you're a beginner sock maker. I think I haven't knit a lot of her patterns, but I get the impression from people that they're not like really explaining everything. You have to sort of be a little bit sort of able to knit independently, but I'm just using them for the numbers and to give me, just to make sure that they're sort of coming out the right size. So she's got a bluish pair, she's got a kind of more multicoloured pair. These have actually already been worn, so they're looking a bit fluffy already. Yes, but she loves them. And then I've got one last pair on the needles, so that, yeah, that's not had its ends woven in yet. Very bright and jazzy. And that's the second one, so you can see all the ends, and then I've got sort of that left on that stripe. So sometimes I'm completely using up the whole ball. I'm trying to sort of do maximum 8 rows per coloured chunk, sometimes going down to 2, which I quite like as well. So sometimes I'm having even teeny tiny balls left over, but I'm going to be able to use those in the crochet blanket. And then I've cast on a pair for my son, but he's got bigger feet, so these are taking longer. And these are knitted on 3mm needles, and they are the DK version of the Church Mouse patterns, I think. I can't remember, but it's a pattern, sock pattern that I knit all the time in DK weight and that I absolutely love. So he chose these colours, and actually every single one of these yarns I have naturally dyed. So logwood, weld, madder, madder, weld, logwood, logwood, madder, onion skins, madder, logwood, onion skins, logwood, madder, logwood, madder, onion skins, madder. He chose all the colours. He's not a big fan of the yellows apparently, but he didn't mind. I'm doing the magic loop. Sometimes I knit 2 at a time. I really like doing that. Sometimes I'm just knitting them 1 at a time, but sort of catching up quickly. That's just to give you an idea of all the lovely ends I've got to weave in. Like I said, I don't mind. I'm really enjoying that now. And yeah, I just haven't finished them off because his feet are enormous. He's coming up for 10 and he's a size 39 shoe, European size 39, which means he's now got bigger feet than his French grandma, who very kindly gave him some walking shoes last year that she didn't wear anymore, and some welly boots, just to save us a few pennies. And yeah, he's now too big for these shoes, so I'm just concerned that he's going to be too big for these, because he's probably going to grow loads over the summer. So I've decided I'm going to just rip out the toe and just make it a tiny bit longer, just so that we've got some wriggle room. Or I might even keep it on hold until the September, October, we'll see. I was wondering though, I know that my grandma, my Swiss grandma, who was my knitting inspiration, she taught me how to make socks, and I've got all of her old needles. I've also got, I don't have it here, but I sort of inherited her knitting machine, which I'd love to learn how to use one day. Yeah, I know that from my dad that she used to, on their jumpers that she knitted, she used to unravel their sleeves when they got too short and then would like knit more length. And I was wondering if you could do that with socks, like if I didn't weave in the ends of the toes, could I sort of like unravel them as they grow and then just add in a row? Don't know. I just thought of that the other day. I thought it'd be fun. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. I've just been being very scrappy, very just enjoying little projects that are portable, that I can sit outside in the garden. I can pick them up in the middle of the night when I've got insomnia, and just like working with my beautiful stash. Yeah, it's probably because it's the time of year, although it's getting a bit later maybe now, but there's been a lot of videos as I've been sort of delving back into YouTube and knitting YouTube since the beginning of the year about stash. There's been lots of videos like about stash busting, going through your stash, flashing your stash, all different kinds of things, and I find it really fascinating. Like, I actually love seeing what other people have got in their wall pantry. I love also actually seeing what people bring back from like festivals and things like that. So I'm just going to sit back in my chair now. Let me just move you a little bit because my back's hurting a little bit. So I'll just get my knitting out for a minute. Yeah, I really enjoy it, and I know that some people don't like that, which I totally respect. And I will admit, I don't like it when they use the word haul in the title. I tend to not watch those because immediately it just makes me think of sort of overconsumption, which that's my personal feeling. I don't have a judgment on that person, because as I've seen people say, and I would agree with it, we all have our limitations, we all have our capacity. What can seem massive to one person can seem quite small to another. It depends sort of on so many factors, and I would agree with that. So it's not at all a judgment, but I do really enjoy sort of living vicariously through others, seeing like other stashes, and kind of like, I haven't read the book, but Clara Parks's book, A Stash of One's Own, like that sort of, that speaks to me. And it's just made me reflect on my own stash a little bit, and I am in the process of spring cleaning my stash. I keep my yarns and like things like wool felt and wool fabric in clear plastic boxes with clip lids. That seems to be the most efficient way to keep the moths at bay. Which doesn't mean that we don't have moths. We had a bit of a problem having been away over the summer with some of our jumpers, which was a bit heartbreaking. Yes, so every spring and every autumn I go through the boxes, hoover them, take the yarn out, hoover them, wash the boxes in white wine vinegar, go through the yarn. Sometimes I sort of reorganise it, sometimes I sort of remove things that I don't want to keep anymore, and then I put it all back in and cover it in lavender essential oil. And I'll then sort of, you know, I'm quite sort of have to be really on the ball with like keeping my workspace hoovered and stuff, so there's not sort of lint and dust and also wool fluff. Yes, anyway, I'm in the middle of doing that, and my stash currently is housed on some shelves my dad kindly built for me in what was our spare bedroom and is now our daughter's room. So we tend to use it, or we had been using it as kind of like an attic space, because we don't have an attic in the house that we rent. We don't have outside cupboards, so there's bits of mine, there's clothes, like children's clothes that on their way out, or that we've been given as hand-me-downs and that we're waiting to use for our daughter or our son. So there's lots of things going on in that room, and I really want to streamline it and get it sort of move my stash into as small boxes as possible, get it up high, and then we can remove one of the shelving units, and then it can kind of become a nice place for my daughter. She's only just sort of starting to play in her room independently. It's just starting to become a place that's not just for sleep. So yeah, that's, if we can have it all nice and ready for the autumn when we come back from the summer, that'll be sort of my goal, but if we can do it before, that would be great. All of which is to say, I've been going through my stash, I've been reacquainting myself with some treasures. I've been quite amazed to see just how much colour I have in my stash, considering that my preference for knitted clothes is sort of in the blues and the greys, with an occasional dusty pink or mustard yellow. I do have a lot of coloured yarn, and what's been lovely is a lot of these are either things I've collected or I've been given, or like quite a lot of it is actually natural dye experiments. And I have a fair bit of stash which actually was for natural dyeing, so some white skein, naturally white skeins, and some light grey, because when I first started natural dyeing 10 years ago, I wanted to possibly sell my yarn, my naturally dyed yarn, which I also wanted to sell my hand spun, which when I think about it now, I know a lot more about what sells and what doesn't sell, and I don't want to become a natural dyer, and I don't want to spin for production. But I would really like to get back into natural dye, just for myself and my family as a hobby. And as I just said, I've got some yarn mordanting on the stove while I'm chatting to you. So, for example, this is a naturally dyed yarn that I dyed in 2015 whilst heavily pregnant with my son. And I am just getting so much joy revisiting my stash and revisiting my Ravelry and looking at patterns that I bought in the last 10 years but perhaps haven't got around to knitting, just because either I was a bit too ambitious and didn't realise that an all over lace pattern jumper was probably going to be too difficult for me with a newborn baby, but also things that yeah, I just didn't have time, or the baby grew a bit too quick. So I'm just sort of feeling really inspired at the moment to bring some love to my stash. In French, I noticed some podcasters call it le butin, which I believe, if I've not got that wrong, is like treasure chest. And I was thinking about that the other day, and I really like that. I like the idea of calling your stash your treasure chest, because I really do have treasures in my stash. Like, I don't really have any famous yarn. I think I have once knitted with what's it called, Quince and Company, which I didn't really enjoy. I made a cardigan for my daughter, and yeah, I wasn't that fussed with the yarn, to be honest. I thought it was a lot of hype for nothing. I have quite a lot of old balls of like blacker yarns, a tiny bit of John Arbon in my spinning stash, but mainly it's yarns that I've collected, a lot of them sort of 10 or 8 years ago, when I was going to some like local French wool festivals, and it's things that I've bought directly from mills, or when I visited a mill, and I'm mainly drawn to like the natural shades of sheep. Yeah, it's really surprising to see what I've got, and I'm feeling very motivated to reconnect with those yarns and, yeah, give them the life, you know, the potential that they have, which is to become garments or toys or accessories, home things for the home. Like, it's not for me a question of I'm not going to buy any more yarn, or I'm not going to buy any yarn this year. It's not like I'm going to force myself to stash down to stash zero or anything like that. I just want to, yeah, just reacquaint myself with these yarns, become friends with them again, swatch, try things out, think what could they become, chat with my husband, is there something he would like me to knit with one of them? Because the only problem I have, this is just the one downside, is my shape has changed dramatically in the last 6 years, since going on some very strong psychiatric medicine. I'm finding that change difficult. I found that change very difficult to process, and one of the reasons is because I had, oh dear, I don't have any memory left on my memory card. I'm going to have to stop here and empty my memory card, but I probably won't have time to film for the rest of the day, so I'll be really quick. I was just saying that I had 4 or 5 jumper weights of yarn, and unfortunately that's not enough now to clothe me in my current size. So I've been going through them, I've been looking on Ravelry, and I'm trying to see, I'm envisaging that I'm going to knit some jumpers for my husband. I'm really excited about the prospect. I would love to make him 2 or 3 jumpers for, well, his birthday soon, but I won't have time to knit for him. I wouldn't have time to knit him something for the 1st of May. But I want to make him a couple of jumpers this year and make sure that they really fit properly. I don't have like the problems with the Papa Bear jumper that I talked about a couple of years ago in a podcast, maybe like 3 podcasts ago. So yeah, I want to make things for him. I want to make things for the children, so not just socks, but some, I'd like to make them both a jumper or a cardigan for next autumn winter. I have some yarns, possible candidates, both which have our acrylic blends, but yeah, I'll talk about that at another time. So yeah, to resume everything, I am feeling really positive about my knitting and crochet life. It's bringing me a lot of joy. It's bringing me some really good focus. It's helping me to reconnect with that creative side of me that's so important in my day-to-day, that kind of nourishes me and gives me things to look forward to, gives me focus, gives me incentives. I've recently reconnected with another English-speaking mum who lives here, having sort of met her once a year or so ago, and then now we're sort of meeting up a little bit, and she suggested that we do some making at the same time, so I'm really enjoying that. I'm keen to participate in the Magic 3 Mal this year, organised by Mimi of the Yarn Chicks podcast. I haven't managed to, for a couple of years, managed to do a full set, but I think this year, I might be onto something. I've already been thinking about what I want to make, or making some initial plans, which maybe I can talk to you about before the 1st of May, which is when it begins. And yeah, I would also like to do some sewing again for myself this year. So explore the possibilities of making a whole outfit for myself in the spirit of Magic 3 Mal, which is a top, a bottom and a toy or an accessory. I will have to stop there for today. I'd love to chat and chat and chat, but my memory card really is running out and I don't want to delete what I've just filmed by accident. So thank you for being here again. Thank you for being here if it's your first time. I haven't properly welcomed you, but I always find a podcast coming back, because it happens all the time, that I have these big absences between podcasts. I feel a bit nervous and a bit jittery and a bit stumble over my words. So yeah, anyway, I am really grateful that you've been here, and I really, really would like to try and make these episodes much more frequently. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there now with a big smile on my face and surrounded by wool. And yeah, wishing you all a good start to April. Gosh, I had some real problems finishing off this podcast, technical issues, but it hasn't put me off. I've had a lovely time sat here chatting with you, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon. Bye bye and take care.